Hello and welcome to Shower Thoughts on a Motorcycle, a podcast by me, your host, Rabbit. Today I want to talk about something very near and dear to me because I'm a male and I've struggled with mental health in the past. Firstly, a disclaimer, I'm not in any way, shape, or form a therapist of any means. I don't have training in this. And this is all personal opinions and hearsay. So take everything following with a grain of salt. But I do feel like I can talk about this space because I have struggled with mental health in the past, and I'm still working on some stuff. So we'll talk about that and also how motorcycles tie into a part of working on that. Okay. So, firstly, I think every time I go to a motorcycle meet or a car meet or anywhere else where like a bunch of dudes are together, whether it be video games or whatever hobby you can imagine, like any meeting of where there's predominantly like any sausage fest. Let's just come out and say any sausage fest where there's mostly dudes and there's a lot of ego and a lot of posturing, and things akin to those. Like just trying to outdo each other. And this is outside the realm of organized competition, right? Like I'm not talking about racing. I'm not talking about, esports competitions and stuff like that. Just generally like casual places where males end up competing for no reason other than to do it and ruin the mood, awkwardly so. I don't know if you've ever seen this, but it's basically like you go to a bike meet or a car meet, right? And you take your vehicle, which let's just use the example of my Street Triple RS, which is arguably one of the coolest bikes Triumph has ever made. In my opinion, it rides amazing. It's one of the best riding bikes ever. This is not a flex to tell you how great this bike is. I do have a YouTube video and a short review of it available if you want to watch that. Long story short, you take that thing, which is a 765 inline triple engine, you take it to a bike meet, and there will guaranteed be someone with either a bike that has a larger displacement engine or that's got more prestige in terms of being a homologated race model, or that's just, I don't know, a cruiser, that's got a sound system and is basically a rolling couch, right? And they'll be like, oh, yeah, mine's better, blah, 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 all this shit. Yeah, everybody at the meet has the coolest motorcycle for themselves. You know what I'm saying? And I've done this. I've talked about this in the pilot episode. Maybe you should check that out if you are new to the podcast, about how you should, stop putting down people about their bikes. And I've made another video about it. Long story short, I think it's a mental health issue at hand when people feel like the way to socialize, or not people, men in general, feel like the way to socialize is to, be exclusive, to be better than others. There's a difference between being a mentor and being a coach to someone that's newer and genuinely coming from a good place, versus my hog's got more torques than your little shitty sport bike and stuff like that, And I think it's also something you see daily on the road when you ride around and you see these parking lot queen built, ego hauling trucks. I like to call them. Maybe that's a little bit discriminatory, and I'm sure there's people out there. Like I have met those in traffic that are genuinely just good people, and they just like the style of lifted trucks with big chrome wheels and mudding tires for road use and daily driving. More power to them. But I'm talking about those that just have to be better than everyone else. I feel like that's just a rough place to be in life, when you have to establish dominance to everybody around you, and you can't just live in harmony. So, and then on the other hand of that is people who think they're not good enough, right? Like the riders that have commented on my YouTube videos and gone, this is a noob question, but I haven't I have no experience, and this might be stupid of me asking this and stuff like that. And it's especially something I see a lot of guys in college. Either you're too scared to speak up and ask your question and then expect your homies to answer it who don't have a master's degree in whatever class you're in, or, any education further than yourself, or just generally in this, like, I don't want to say beta male behavior, but this, like, I'm lesser than, so please tell me, senpai, type of shit. That's what I'm going to be talking about. And sorry that took so long to express. I'm bad at talking, and that's what I want to use to introduce the first I want to say of my opinions about this. I almost said fact. None of this is fact again. But my first opinion is that men are just bad at talking about feelings, not to put them on blast, my partner, every time any feelings or anything come in the fact, it's a struggle and a half. And I have also struggled massively with this, right? Like, the first time I went through a traumatic moment in my military career, because I was an air traffic controller for 6 years, and saw something bad. I was like, maybe I should go to therapy because I haven't slept in like 4 days straight, So did that. Therapist is like, so what's bothering you? And I'm like, yeah, I'm fucking sounding like a dial-up router, trying to explain my feelings, which is not normal, right? Like, but they assured me, hey, listen, dudes are awful at talking about this, right? Because you never talk about your feelings. So how do you get better at that? How do you get better at expressing yourself? Well, for starters, anything you do in life that you're bad at, just do more of, and you will naturally get better, right? Like riding motorcycles. The more you're in the seat, the better you're going to get at riding bikes, The more you talk about your emotions, the better you're going to get at talking about your feelings. And I think you should do that. And this is not a total plug for therapy right off the rip, right? I think a lot of men could just go about it a different way, for starters. More on that later. But I just wanted to get across that talking about your feelings isn't weak. It's definitely, I think a lot of the most successful and strong people, and males in general in the world, are experts at communicating what they're feeling, right? It's another thing to be able to talk about something too and describe it in great detail, bringing it back to bikes, because if you think about it, most of the riders in these competitive sports, they go out, they ride the bike around the track really fast, and then something on the bike is not right. Well, if you go back to the pit lane and you tell your race engineer that, well, the bike is shit, what's the first thing they're going to ask you? They're going to be like, okay, what's bad about it? And if you can't describe what's even bad about it, then the whole team's in trouble. So learn to talk about your feelings. It really helps. And you don't even have to talk to your therapist about that, but, practice with your partner, practice with your friends, and if your friends deny the fact that you, or deny you the opportunity or the audience to talk about your feelings because they think it's emasculating or you're weak for it, that leads into my next thing. Find a community. Find a good community. Somewhere where you really either fit in perfectly the first time around or somewhere where you can grow. Like some conglomerate of people that is just accepting to you as a person and accepting to your growth and making you a better person. There's famous quotes about it. I don't know who said it, but you are an amalgam of the top 5 people you hang out with, and that's unbelievably true, right? Like, you're going to adopt patterns of people because you're around them and you're learning. It's another thing I talked about in the pilot episode, or it's something I talked about in the second episode of this podcast about implicit and explicit learning. When you're around people that generally exhibit good behavior, you're going to exhibit good behavior because you implicitly learn from their actions that, this is how you act as a good human, So hang around with a good crowd that is good for you, and finding that can be extremely difficult. I'll tell you that. If you don't have a decent upbringing, and it takes a lot of introspection to look at this as well, like looking into yourself and thinking about how you're feeling. If you look at the group of people that you're with and can't tell that they're bad for you, I'd really try hanging out with more people. Because if you hang out with more people and you see that they're a better influence on your life than the ones that you're hanging out with, just cease hanging out with the ones you were initially. You know, I hope that makes sense. Another thing, dude, I wrote all my talking points on a sticky note, and like 3 of 5 of them are literally just be around people that are better than you, you know? Because the exponential growth you experience when you're around good folks is just can't be understated. All right, anyway. That being said, once you're in a good place, it's your responsibility, or if you're part of a group where there's people struggling, you know, and there's folks in there like young guys who don't know shit about anything, support another, you know, lead them to the right sources of information. Be like, hey, you know, what's your goals? And then help them accomplish their goals. I think 90% of being successful in life is just seeing, hey, listen, there's something I want to accomplish. And it's not always easy to find that, but it is very simple to identify the steps to success. Because we're in the information age, meaning you can look up anything on the internet, right? Like, you want to be a better motorcycle rider? Look up riding techniques on YouTube. Yeah, not everybody's an expert, but chances are there's somebody there from like Superbike School or Yamaha Champ School or, you know, whatever. Or you want to be better at computer science. Harvard has free computer science on the internet. Yeah, computer science courses. So it's very easy to build yourself up with free resources. And that being said, I think one of the things I struggled most with in life is having a purpose, right? I think a lot of my adolescent years went into the trash can because I just didn't have a purpose, and it was like live free, die young type of beat where I just go out skateboarding and drinking with my friends. I don't give a shit about school, you know. My future is probably going to extend to the 20s, and then I'll be either dead or in jail, so it doesn't matter anyway. Why would I build myself up? And that gets you into this Teufelskreis, which is like a circular notion and behavior of you get into worse and worse circles, right? Because you care less and less about yourself. If you're not taking care of yourself, you're going to spiral out of control 100% of the time. Like, whether it takes years or it takes weeks. You know what I'm saying? So look out for what feels good and what feels bad. And I said this in the last episode too. Stay away from the stuff that feels bad, you know? Chances are it's not good for you. We're like, you know, a couple millennia into human evolution. So we've pretty much developed a system in our brains that's just the native programming of our brains tells us what's good and what's bad, right? If you're feeling bad all the time, hang out with a different crew, work on yourself, work on your body, exercise. There's a great purpose right there. Just building your physical fitness is already amazing, and it's great for your brain and your heart and your body health, you know? So do that, but find a purpose greater than what you're currently experiencing in life. Whether you want to be a motorcycle racer, whether you want to be, you know, a teacher or anything like that, whatever you want to do, I would suggest that you, first of all, try out because you might not like it. And then secondly, build your life around it. If you want to be, you know, like I really enjoy getting new people into motorcycling because it's been a life-changing experience for me. And I see this every episode and every YouTube video and everything. And it just can't be understated how much of a positive influence riding bikes has been on my life. And I think it stems from, as a kid, just riding bicycles and getting from my house to school, you know? And it occupies your brain, and it's something to do, and it's something to get better at constantly because human beings barely understand motorcycle physics as is, right? Even in MotoGP, you know, they don't have it figured out to chase the perfect lap yet. And that's the peak of human motorcycling, you know? So it's something definitely any normal human being can strive towards and improve upon. But that being said, it also goes outside of that. You know, if you are sitting there and you're probably mad and you know, or a little depressed because you're hungry and you haven't eaten all day, and then you're like, okay, let me go out and get some food. Well, why would you go out and get some food if you could learn and have a purpose in becoming a better cook, you know? And then you can get into a community of people that cooks at home, and you can share recipes and stuff like that. And there you go, bam, you just made friends, right? It's just another talking point, another story that you can tell is, hey, the other day I, you know, baked a calzone, a spinach mozz calzone, and it turned out all right. It wasn't complete garbage, you know? Like I didn't just pull a piece of charcoal out of the oven at the end and had something to eat. And it's interesting, you know, and it makes you an interesting person, and it, like, in a circular way leads you to a better place. And then in all that, you know, this is unique to you, right? Like, nobody actually knows what you're about, and especially not if you're young and like in your 18 plus, you know, to 20, 30-ish, right? You probably haven't figured out what your life is even about. So, you know, back to my previous podcast episode, go out and try things, you know? You'll figure out what you like and don't like. And then my last point, and to finish out the episode, be yourself aggressively. I think that's one of the most biggest struggles I've felt in my life. You know, if you feel that, and I want to preface this with, I don't have any perspective of this, but if you feel that yourself isn't normal, I would definitely seek better help than listening to podcasts, amateur podcasts on YouTube. But you know, go seek a therapist. Practice on talking about how you're feeling. Right, the first point that I said, and go to therapy and maybe talk to people. Right, you'll be surprised what some of these therapists can cook up. Right, they'll be like, "Hey, listen, why are you feeling like this?" And then you can't say anything, and they're like, "Okay, do you have a job? Do you have a partner? Do you have financial well-being? Do you have good health?" You know, and there's these core competencies in life that you need to have before, you know, you can be expected to feel good on an average basis. That being said, if, you know, outside of that, you can't be yourself because, like, you're part of the LGBT community in a rural neighborhood and everybody's like, yeah, I don't want to bring politics into this, but, you know, very bigoted, or you're very progressive and you like green energy and want to ride an electric motorcycle or something, but you're stuck in a state that still, you know, is pro coal or something, you know, like, it might be really hard. No, it's not. It might be. It will be really hard to, you know, be yourself in that community. But even there, I'm sure there's a subculture locally or on the internet you can find local meeting spots or anything like that. In car dependent America, it's hard to go out, so you might have to tolerate, you know, feeling like crap about not being able to share who you are publicly for a couple years. But, you know, make it a point to build yourself early on if you're younger, to get away from your folks, you know, get away from your hometown. And that's what I did, so I can only recommend it. I did it through the military, which maybe isn't the greatest path because I didn't enjoy most of my time there. It did set me up for a really decent, like, base average life outside. And I got away from my folks, who my father was just predominantly against the LGBT, really, you know, conservative principles. My mom's very conservative as well. They're church people, and my whole life, I just really couldn't be myself because I'm, you know, more on the progressive side. I love technology. I love, you know, being able to express yourself. And if that speaks to you, you definitely should get out of the environment you're in as soon as possible. And on the way there, utilize the internet and maybe even generative AI to be like, hey, develop a roadmap for me to be as successful as I can and independent early on so I can get out of where I am and into communities that appreciate me where I can be myself. But once you're independent and once you have a steady baseline, right, don't just like come out to your conservative parents at, very young age and be like, listen, which this is not marked for kids anyway, so I don't know why I'm going this into detail about it, but if you can't do that and you lose your housing, your shelter, food, or, your water because you come out, then don't do that. Hang out for a little while, even though it really sucks, but you're going to build rejection and tolerance up that way anyway. So, but yeah, once you're independent and ready to go, be yourself aggressively, go to find your community, find a support system, and then, you don't have to go to motorcycle meets and posture, and you're not going to be a nuisance to society because you're probably going to be pretty well liked by a larger community. That's a positive influence on your life and the outside world. So I really appreciate you for listening. Leave me a comment below whether that was like a extremely hot take or I'm just like preaching to the choir at this point. Please leave a like as well if you enjoyed the content, or dislike, it's up to you. And subscribe for more content. I'll be posting these pretty regularly. So I enjoyed your audience. Thanks so much for listening, and I'll see you in the next one.